Okay, so Be'ezras Hashem, we are continuing with our weekly series of Shiurim on the Heilige Zohar HaKadosh, the book of the Zohar, which the Heiliger of Pinchas Karitzer said that he thanks Hashem every day for being born in a generation when the Zohar HaKadosh was revealed, because without the Zohar HaKadosh, he wouldn't have access to his Yiddishkeit. That the Heiliger of Pinchas says that there were so many times where the katnus was so great that really the only thing that was able to break him out of that katnus, as we understand katnus by the tzaddikim, was the light of the Zohar. And that the light of the Zohar undergoes a shift on a daily basis in terms of what it means for us, in terms of the healing salve that it can offer us. The book of the Zohar, the osios of the Zohar, the light of the Zohar, whether we understand it or not, has a way of breaking a person out of whatever prison of the mind and heart they find themselves, to enter into the secret of Bahai Safri Afkin Megalusa Barachban, that with this book you're going to be redeemed from exile by way of great compassion, because the secret of the Zohar HaKadosh itself is the uncovering of great compassion. What's the great compassion of the Zohar HaKadosh? The great compassion of the Zohar HaKadosh is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has chosen us to be human beings and not malachim. The malachim are disgusted by the language of Aramaic. Aramaic, the language of the Zohar, discusses the malachim because it represents the need to descend down away from the original ideal, down into the territory of interpretation, which always also means potential misunderstanding, in that territory of translation. Once the original voice is no longer heard in the echoes of that original voice's disappearance, the awakening of a translation, of drawing down the ideas into our consciousness so that it can have an impact on us, it's a murky territory. It's a territory that only the human being, Adam, which comes from language of Madama, has the ability to enter into that territory of translation, of dimyon, of imagining one thing from another, and ensuring the very fine point of essential meaning that never changes. That secret of translation necessitates a descent away from the original whole. Malachim don't want anything to do with that. Malachim don't know this secret. Malachim only know light. They don't know darkness. Only the human being has the capacity of entering into the light and then finding the light within the darkness itself and returning back to the light with an even more potent message, which is that the light survives its own extinguishment. That light of Targum, that light of the Talmud Bavli, that light of the Bilbul and the Achorayim and the hither side of experience, where I can no longer behold something in an immediate way, but rather I'm stuck and lost in translation. The book of the Zohar is a book of love. It's a book of compassion because it allows the human being to be a human being. It's not a book of omdim like the Malachim are, but rather it's a book of the Holchem Bein HaOmdim, the light of Moshe Rabbeinu, who walks with Klal Yisrael, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who walks along with the companions. And that's where Rachamim Rabim comes from. Rachamim Rabim comes from the fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu did not give the Torah to the Melachei Hasharis, and that the Torah was not nisna to perfect people. And when we can have compassion on ourselves, we can begin to have compassion on others. And then we can begin to have compassion on the nitzatz eloki that's hidden and trapped within the exile of the self. The exile of the self that has not yet accepted the fact that I am not a malach, I am a ben adam. And that to be a ben adam means that it's sheva yipol hatzadik v'kam, that the tzaddik stands up and gets up and falls down and stands up and falls down and stands up. And in tzaddik ba'aretz asher yaseh toiv lo yichta, and every person has to be a tzaddik because the ikar nukud of the tzaddik is that they're imperfect, and mamela everybody can be imperfect. We might not be able to be as gracefully imperfect as the tzaddik can be, who has no imperfection other than the fact that he's a human being. Moshe Rabbeinu was a ben Adam in the end of the day. That's why he couldn't grasp the essence of godliness. It wasn't because of his bad deeds, God forbid. By us already, where we feel the real chisaro, and the importance is to accept ourselves and to find rachamim rabim, to have compassion on the fact that Hashem wants us to be a human being, and to be a human being means to descend away from clarity into the murky territories of the achorayim and the secret of the terdema of Targum, where I fall into a slumber, where I need to wake myself up and recreate a lost original sense of meaning in spite of the fact that I don't have it anymore. And that's where we're forced to uncover the secret of Bechalom Adaberbo, the secret of imagination, the secret of retrieving prophecy, Biyad HaNeviim Adama. In the hands of the Nevi'im is where the imagination is going to unfold. And as we're going to see in the Zohar HaKadosh this week, the hands, and like we spoke about last week in the Shir on Netilas Yadayim, the hands represent the thing that's farthest from the head. The hands represent that place of concealment where the hands extend into the territories of darkness. But ultimately, the secret of being a human being is to raise the hands upwards again, to uncover the secret of the translational power of the burgeoning emergence of prophecy, to hear the head call, to hear that bas call, to hear that echo of a distant future, past, whatever it is that we're yearning towards. But we know that we're yearning to uncover that secret of Biyad HaNevi'im Adama, to uncover Tunas Hashem Yabit, that by way of imagining HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I create an image of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And in that image, I have the capacity of understanding that I know that you have no image, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Avada, you have no image. There's no image of an image. There's no negation of image that can be applied to you. There's no possibility of image. But nevertheless, Biyad HaNevi'im Adama, because I'm not a malach, I have to work with my imagination. I have to work from the bottom up. And this is the secret of the Zohar Kadosh that the malachim can't understand. And this is what we always say when we say that the light of the Zohar is about drawing down the light of Moshe Rabbeinu into the vessels of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Moshe Rabbeinu represents Chochma, the Koyach Ma, Min Hamayim Mishisuhu, that cool, calm, and collected place of idealism where things are operating in the way that they're meant to operate, where there's no question marks to existence, there's no folds that are ruffling the flow of experience. In that place, Moshe Rabbeinu is like an Isha Elokim, he's like a Malach, he goes up on high. In that place of Chachma, there's a light, there's a blinding light that's revelatory of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's infinitude. But that light of Chachma needs a levush. That light of Chachma needs a garment. The garment is that which conceals the light on the one hand, because a garment covers over that which is bare. But at the very same moment, in spite of the fact that it's concealing that which is underneath it, it's also revealing that which is underneath it. Because without the garment, there would be no seeing the thing that's underneath the garment. And it's only through the garment that we have the capacity of beholding that which is hidden within the garment. And even though the garment is not the thing that's hidden within the garment, without the garment, we would have no capacity to even be aware of the fact that there's something hidden within the garment. And therefore, the secret of the levush, the secret of the yichud tata, the secret of Bina, the secret of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, is necessary in order to fulfill the process of Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu, that chachma, that abstract form of unity must be drawn down into the levush. It must be drawn down into the garment that conceals at the very same moment that it reveals. As the Arizal says in the name of the Ramak, Ki ha'elem hu hagilui v'hagilui hu ha'elem. When it comes to the infinite light that is expressed through chachma, experienced through the bitul muchletas of chachma, so the Gilui is a ha'elem. If it's fully revealed, then it's an act of concealment, because when it's fully revealed, I can't grasp it. It's like looking at the sun, I'm blinded by it, and therefore its pure revelation is its concealment. V'ha'elem hu ha'gilui, and its concealment is its revelation, because once it's diminuted and concealed underneath the levush, so then the light that shines forth from within that levush is refined to the degree that I can experience it. And this is the Sha'ashuim, as the Ateres Tzvi of Zidichov, whose yard set it is today, the Sar HaZohar, explains later on in the Zohar Kadosh, something that we're not going to be discussing so much. But Sha'ashuei HaMelech, the pride and the joy and the playfulness that the tzaddikim experience, is the processing of understanding how the or is mislabesh itself from one level to the next. It's not a joy found in the pure expression of light. That's a bittul. The joy comes about by that infinite light being reduced within itself by way of halbasha, by way of levushim and garments that conceal in order to reveal, but that light never loses its original potency. That's where the sha'ashuei hamelech comes from. The halbasha sa'oros betoch hakelim, the drawing down of the light of Moshe Rabbeinu and Chochma into the levush of Rabbi Shimon. And this is why Moshe Rabbeinu goes up to retrieve the soul of Rabbi Shimon, as the Ramchal points out. Alisa lamarum shivisa shevi lakachal matanos ben livnei adam. That Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on high to retrieve the levush of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Shevi is Rosh Tevos, Shimon Bar Yochai, because Chochma needs Bina in order to reveal itself. This was the whole impetus on a certain level, as we can understand it based on the writings, in our humble opinion, of Rabbeinu's journey to Eretz Yisrael. That before Eretz Yisrael, Rabbeinu was zoichet to the Chochma Ilah. He was zoichet to Chochma. He was like a malach. But to be a human being, to be zoichet to the halbasha of Chochma, to be zoichet to the levushim that can still reveal Chochma, to the secret of Bina, that's only in Eretz Yisrael. That's where a person goes down into the avoda of the yadayim, the avoda of the hands itself. And that's what the Zohar is about. It's about reminding us that the goal is not to stay in Chochma, but to draw Chochma down into Bina and allow the unity of Chochma and Bina to reveal something even greater, which is the light of Keser, which comes about when we realize that Hashem is not only found above in the light of Moshe, but specifically down below in the Levushim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Now, in this week's Parsha, in the Zohar HaKadosh, in this week's Parsha, we find the remarkable section called the Yenukah. The Yanuka, the young child. Now, it's not the only place in which we find the Yenuka in the Zohar HaKadosh. It appears in numerous places. a wisdom beyond the years of the child, representative of the fact that there's an illumination of a neshama, there's an illumination of Torah, of a neshama that's mislabish, and chidushay Torah that are coming out by the mouth of somebody who is not necessarily deserving of that capacity, but rather rooted in something far beyond them. It's an expression of the neshama. It has nothing to do with the individual themselves. It has to do with the shlichus of the individual. The secret of the Yenukah, that ani zakein ma'od ve'adayin hu yanik, as Rabbeinu tells us, that a person can be very, very old and still be a Yenukah. To be a Yanik is someone who is nursing from a source far higher than themselves, far higher than their ego. A Yenuka is in a state of Yenika. It's oichel mimashe imoy oicheles. It's plus klilin bethlus. It's prior to consciousness. It's the awareness that I'm an uber b'mei imo, and that the vaya uman es hadasa, the light of emuna that is emergent in the Yenuka, which is the secret of not knowing anything but drawing down from that chalav ha'elyon that's coming from above. That's the secret of the hiskalus of the Yenuka. And the Yanuka's avodah, the Torah that we're going to see from the Yanuka, is going to be reflective of exactly what we just discussed. We're going to encounter the Chavraya Kadisha. We're going to encounter Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Yitzchak, who are traveling. They're traveling to find Rav Himnuna Saba. And instead of finding Rav Himnuna Saba, they encounter a woman and her child. And upon encountering this child, they encounter this wondrous thing where the child smells on them already their spiritual standing. And the child opens up its mouth and it reveals wonders of wonders. And it reveals pile playim, and it reveals a knowledge of the soul and the mechanisms of the soul. And the Tanaim are astonished, and the Tanaim sit and they partake and they eat with this child until they leave with brachos and they live with wisdom. Now this story, this strange story of the Chachamim coming down and finding the Yenukah, and the Yenukah transforming himself into the teacher of the Chachamim, is exactly this dynamic that we're talking about. The Chachamim represent Chochma. Rabbi Yehuda and Rav Yitzchak, they represent Chochma. The Yenukah represents a child. It represents a mother and a child, which is Bina, the source of Yenikah, of the nursing, of the process where Bina is mashpia down to Zer Anpin. That's Katnus. So the Chachamim come in, and they think they're the Chachamim. They have the Chochma of Moshe Rabbeinu. And they encounter this Yenukah, who's the son of this mother, the light of Bina. And suddenly, instead of Chochma teaching Bina, Bina suddenly reveals the necessity that Chochma has to adapt to Bina. And the Yanuka begins to teach these Chachamim about what it means to wash their hands, and what it means to eat properly, and what it means to be in a process rather than in a state of Chachma. Because what Bina has to teach Chochma is ultimately the ability to draw down the ideal down into reality, and for the ideal not only to not be disappointed by reality, but to uncover the tachlis of reality, that it's specifically by way of the schlepping down of Chochma down into Bina that the true light of Kesser is going to be revealed. And the part of the Yanuka that we're going to be looking at is exactly indicative of this secret. The Chachamim are the Chachma of Moshe Rabbeinu. The Yanuka is the light of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. As we see, the Chachamim at the end, when they're aware of what just took place and who they just learned from, this Yanuka, they say praiseworthy is the generation that has Rabbi Shimon in it. Why? Because the Yanuka is the koach of Bina. The Yanuka is the koach of the Halbashas Hadavarim. The Yanuka, that place of Yenika, that place of where we're not feeling divinely attached, where we're not operating in the mindset of Chachma. In that territory of finding a Kadosh Baruch Hu down here below, in the nether realm, in the Dir B'Tachtoinim, stuck in that place of being stuck, the Yanuka has the wisdom to reveal to the Chachamim the secret of Habasha, the secret of what it means to understand the Tachlis of drawing wisdom down into a Levush. And this child, this Yanuka, the Chachamim thought it was the child of Rav Himnuna Saba. We've spoken about Rav Himnuna Saba, the light of Bina. The light of Bina within the Zohar HaKadosh. Rabbi Shimon is Avada Bina, but then there's a Bina within the Bina. There's a Chachma within the Bina, which is the light of Rabbi Shimon, as Rabbi Nachman explains very clearly in L'chu Chazu, that Rabbi Shimon is the Chachma within Bina. And then there's a Bina within Bina, which is Rav Himnuna Saba, who's the concealment of concealment. Rav Himnuna Saba, the Alter Rebbe wanted to name the Mittler Rebbe Rav Himnuna Saba because he was connected to that place of Bina, Rechovas Anahar, the depths of concealment and the watery abysmal depths of the Mayim Elyonim and the Mayim Tachtoinim. And they came to find the wisdom of Bina. They came searching for Rabbi Hamnuna Saba. They came to try and understand the wisdom of concealment. And in truth, it comes about from the mother and her Yenukah, which is the secret of the wisdom of Habasha, which teaches Chochma the necessity of drawing itself down into the realm of the murky waters, into the territory of the lack of absolute clarity, so that we can uncover the secret work of Targum and awakening ourselves out of Terdema and undoing the shame of feeling what it's like to not always be living on the level of Chochma, and embracing the process of drawing Chochma down into Bina so that we can be Zoicha to the light of Keser Elyon Alav Nikra. Zak the Heilige Zohar Kadosh. Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda have azla be'orcha. Rabbi Yitzchak and Rabbi Yehuda were walking along the way, and over here Rabbi Yitzchak is the Gevura and Rabbi Yehuda is the Malchus. That ultimately, Abiyah Sabrata, Chochma has to reveal itself fundamentally within Malchus, and the only way for it to do that is through the Koyach of Bina and Gevurus, which is Rabbi Yitzchak. So this wisdom of Chochma, learning the secret of the Habasha of Bina, is going to come about by the capacity of the Rabbi Yitzchak within the Rabbi Yehuda, the Gevura of the Malchus that is attached to Chochma, which is ultimately the Butzina de Kardenusa, which is the process of understanding the need to descend downwards in order to ascend upwards again. Rabbi Yitzchak, Rabbi Yehuda have azla ba'orcha. What's the path that Chochma is embraced on? The path of Chochma the path that Chochma is always engaged in, is the descent of Chochma away from itself into the territory of Bina, allowing for Bina to emerge from within Chochma, because that's the place where the true level of Chochma, Pnimius Atik, which is light of Keser, is going to be revealed. So they were azle ba'orcha. They were going along their path. They were going along their path in order to reveal the secrets of Bina and how Chachma needs Bina. Matu lahahu eser de Kfar Sachnin. They came to that place of Kfar Sachnin. Kfar Sachnin can represent the kapara that comes about at the end when a person is trying to understand how to fix a moment, how to finalize and fulfill the moment that they're in and draw the Chachma into Bina, in order to ensure that they're properly engaged in this moment of being mevar and nitzutz. So the kfar is language of kippur, which is language of kapara, which is the process of refining the self, and sachnin is the gematria of kates. It's the gematria of katz sam lechoshech, that HaKadosh Baruch Hu places an end to the darkness, which is the proper processing of drawing chachma down into bina. Because when we can utilize bina properly, and we can utilize the levushim of bina properly, so then the darkness of katz yamin gets revealed to be the Kates Chai of Yitzchak Avinu. Daveteman Rav Hamnuna Saba, Rav Yehuda and Rav Yitzchak were traveling to the town in which Rav Hamnuna Saba was going to be found. Rav Hamnuna Saba is the secret of Bina. Saba is Gematria Sag, which is the Shem Havaya of Bina. It achru be'isasa delay, and they encountered his wife. Dahavele barachada zeira, and she had a young child. The secret of Bina and Zer Anpin. The secret of Chachma, which is the Chachamim, and then encountering the territory of concealment, which is Bina, and the eventual emergence of Zer Anpin through the stages of Ibor and Yenika. V'chol yuma hava b'beis Safra, and every day this child, the son of Rav Hamnuna Saba, whose mother we see in this story, every day he would go to the Beis HaSefer. Hahu yuma salik mi Beis Safra. That day he had come back from Beis HaSefer. He had come back from the place of Chochma. V'asa l'beis, and he returned to his house. And he sees, okay, Chochma is in the house. Chochma is here to learn the secret of Bina. Amr le'imei, his mother, which is Ema ban Smecha, the secret of Bina, says to him, Karev legabe ilun guvrini loyin v'tarvayach menayu birchin. Bina says to her son, which is her Anpin, go close to Chochma in order to draw down blessing, because that's where blessing comes from. Chochma tichya is ba'ala. But Zer Anpin knows the secret of Bina, and Zer Anpin understands that I don't want to necessarily go close to Chochma first to get a bracha. I want to teach Chochma the necessity of coming down into Bina and expressing the light within the levushim. Karev legabe, the child, the Yanuka, comes closer to the Chachamim. Ad lo karev, but before arriving, ahadar la'achara, he returned backwards. He didn't want to go and connect to Chochma yet. He didn't want to go to the Panim yet. He wanted to remain in the Achorayim, in the secret of Targum, in the secret of Terdema, which is the gematria of Targum. Amr le'ime, and the Yanuka says to his mother, to Bina, I don't want to go closer to those Chachamim. Because that day they didn't read Kriyat Shema. V'hachi ulpali. And I was taught, says the Yanuka, Kol man kari Kriyat Shema ba'inasa, benidoihu kala uyuma. The Yanuka sees that these Chachamim have not said Kriyat Shema. And he refrains from going close to them to get a bracha because he has been taught that anyone who hasn't read Kriyat Shema in its time has a certain nidui placed on them, a certain distancing placed on them for that day. Shamu inan v'tavayu. The Chachamim, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yitzchak heard this and they were very confused. Arimu yadu barchile. They raised their hands and they blessed him. Amru v'adai hachihu. The Chachamim said, you know what? You're certainly correct. This is exactly what it's been like. V'yumada ishtadalna b'hadei chasan v'kala. And today we were engaged in the mitzvah of achnasas kala. D'loi havei leitzarchayu, and they didn't have their needs. V'havei mitarchen leizdavigu, and their wedding was being postponed. V'lo havei barnash leishtad la'alayhu, and there was no one else to help them. V'ana nishtadalna b'hu, and we engaged with them. V'lo karinan kriyat shema ba'oinas, and we didn't read kriyat shema in its time. Uman de is asek b'mitzvah, pater min a mitzvah, and someone who's engaged in a mitzvah is pater from the mitzvah. So the Chachamim are amazed. They see that this Yenukah, the son of this woman, Bina and Zer Anpin, the territory of concealment, that as it's coming closer to get a bracha from Chochma, it stops and it says, you didn't read Kriyat Shema yet. You didn't read Kriyat Shema. And the Chachamim acknowledged and they're amazed and they said, you're right, we didn't read Kriyat Shema because we were Osek b'mitzvah, and Osek b'mitzvah, pater min a mitzvah. And the Heilige Kamarna Rebbe points out that this is not the Kriyat Shema of Shacharis, where a person is not necessarily Osek b'mitzvah, pater min a mitzvah, but rather it's a Kriyat Shema that one says in the morning prior to Shacharis. But the Yanuka senses that they didn't say Kriyat Shema. Amru le bri, the Chachamim look back at this child and they say, my son, b'maya data, how did you know? Amr le berecha de levushaychu yadana. The scent of your garments, the scent of your levush has let me know. Kad kavinu legabcha. When I came close to you, I smelt it on you. I smelt that you didn't read Kriyat Shema. Tavayhu, they were amazed. Yasvu natlu yadayu v'krichu ripta. They sat down, they raised their hands, and they prepared to eat bread. So this Yenukah says, I know that you didn't read Kriyat Shema because I smelt it on your levush. And like we said, the light of Chochma needs a levush. A levush is the ability for Chochma to descend down into a territory of concealment. And even though it's a descent away from the ideal, even though it appears to be a degradation from the purity of the world of Atzilus, nevertheless, there's a necessity of the Yichud Ilah of Atzilus and Chochma to descend down into the levush, into the Baruch Shem Kavod Malchus L'Amvad of the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah. Because it's only when the or could be mislabish in a kli that the light of Yichud is ultimately going to take shape. And so this Yenukah, this young child who represents the Bina of Rav Himnuna Saba and his wife, of Eim Habanim Smecha, who are the secret of the Levushim, he comes along to the Chachamim and he says, I don't want to be mitkariv to you yet because it's clear that you haven't learned the secret of Bina. There's a smell that's coming, or there's a smell that's absent from your levush, meaning to say you're missing the understanding of the levush itself. And therefore, until Chachma has the ability of understanding the necessity of the levush of Bina, there's not necessarily going to be the bracha that Chachma gives to Bina, which is going to be the emergence of Keser. Now, the Heilige Teferes Hachinochi, Rav Gershon Henech Leiner of Radzin, and the Alter Rebbe in Ma'amarim HaKtzerim, they address this issue. They address what this Kriyat Shema is, what the issue here is with this Kriyat Shema. Because the question is, Osek b'mitzvah pater min a mitzvah, theoretically, that they weren't wrong in not reading Kriyat Shema. They were Osek in engaging in worldly matters. They were being machnis kala to chuppah. They were working on things that actually needed to be done in this world. And theoretically, if the entire purpose of this encounter is for Chochma to learn the secrets of Bina, the need for that transcendence to express itself within immanence itself, so wouldn't the stopping of Torah and entering into helping the Chassan and Kala and engaging in this worldly matters and engaging in practical avoda to help another Yid, wouldn't that be representative of the halbasha of Chachma in a reasonable way that the Yanuka would be able to say, you understand it? What better way is there for Chochma, for the Chachamim to show that they understand the necessity of Zos Torah Sa'adam Asher Yamus Ba'ohel, the need to draw the Torah away from Chochma down into that place of the Ohel, which is Bina, and Bina is considered as death in comparison to Chochma. Yamoisu v'loy b'Chochma, as the Heilige Agora points out in the Bir on Safeditz Niusa, based on the Idrizuta and the Idraba, that Kolman denochis midarge delay ikra misa, any descent away from the level of one's actual standing is considered as misa. The descent away from Chochma into Bina is almost like a misa of sorts. Zois Torah Sa'adam. They understand the Torah of the Adam, the Torah of what it means to be a human being, which is to draw Chochma into Bina, is Adam ki yamus ba'ohel, that you reveal that you're a human being who experiences the descent away into Bina, which is the light of Leah, which is the light of Misa, that descent away from Chochma. So wouldn't the Chachamim have accomplished this task by focusing in on what they needed to focus in on? Why is the Yenukah still giving them a hard time, so to say? And what the Alter Rebbe points out is as follows. The Alter Rebbe says that the issue with the Chachamim was not that they didn't say Kriyat Shema. That was what they were supposed to do. Oisek b'mitzvah pater min mitzvah. And on that level of the Maisa being the Iker, the Chachamim understood the necessity of going down into the territory of Bina. But Zak the Heilige Alter Rebbe, the issue is that they didn't fully appreciate that the descent away from Chochma into Bina was the ideal. They still saw it as a certain b'diavad. They still saw the need to descend away from Chochma into the territory of Bina as a b'diavad. And that's what the Yenukah smelt on them. The Yenukah didn't smell on them that, oh, you didn't say Kriyat Shema today. That's the point that the Yenukah is trying to give them, that the important thing is to draw Chochma down into Bina, to be mevatel, the yichud of Shema Yisrael, in order to be Makayim mitzvos and pu'ulos maisios and the dir b'tachtainim of the worlds of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiyah. So that's not what the Yenukah smelt, because that would have been a pleasant smell for the Yenukah, because they would have understood the secret of Halbasha. What the Yenukah smelt was that there was still a certain sense of b'di'evedkeit at the heart of the Chachamim in the necessity to descend down away from the Torah into that territory of Achnasas, Chasan, and Kala, which is dealing with the lower realms of existence. And as a result of that disappointment, or that sense of b'di'evedkeit, that this is not ideal, that the Chachamim sensed, as a result of needing to descend away from the ideal into the reality of this worldliness, that's where the Yanuka is saying that that's what I smell. I sense that there's no true unity here yet between the Chochma and the Bina, because Chochma is still feeling a slight disappointment as the result of descending down into the territory of Bina, and it is not yet fundamentally aware of the fact that the tachlis of the Yerida is an eventual aliyah back to Chochma. The Yanuka doesn't become the hero of the Zohar HaKadosh. The Yanuka is a stop along the way. It's the Chachamim that build the Zohar HaKadosh. It's the Chavrai of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Chochma that comes from Rabbi Shimon. The goal is always to return back to Chochma. But it has to be through Bina, it has to be through that descent, it has to be by way of the Halbasha, it has to be by way of accepting the fact that when a person is not able to live in accordance with that ideal of Chachma, it's by design, it's meant to reveal a certain lechatchila ariber, that a person has to descend down into Bina in order to come back out the other side into Chachma again with a newfound koyach that reveals Pnimius Chachma, Pnimius Ta'atik. And therefore, the Yenukah, which represents the Bina that comes from the mother, who's the wife of Rav Hanuna Saba, the great the great fish of the Zohar HaKadosh, he's revealing that it's not yet revealed the true potency of Bina here yet. Slightly different than the Alter Rebbe's understanding of what the Yenukah was smelling, in the lack of understanding on behalf of the Chachamim, and the need to understand the process of Halbasha. So, the Tiferes HaChanochi says as follows. Tiferes HaChanochi points out that even though they had to be mevatel themselves from the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema, nevertheless, what they were accessing was something far higher than the mitzvah of Kriyat Shema. Meaning to say that the Yenukah was looking to smell the external accomplishments of the descent of Chochma into Bina. And what the Chachamim were already aware of, because Chochma always holds the inner wisdom of Bina within itself. It's what allows Bina to emerge from within Chochma as the lip of its oppositional force that enables the awakening of an even deeper form of Chochma afterwards. But Chochma always holds in mind that reflection that Bina is ultimately going to come and eventually understand, because ultimately all of the machlokes between Chochma and Bina are only a revolution and a revelation of Train Rei and Delimus Parshan. That Chochma and Bina, Moshe Rabbeinu and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai are never actually separate from one another. So from the Mahalach of the Balatanya, we see that the Chachamim and the Chachma didn't yet understand the true principle of how to apply itself down within Bina, which is to understand the necessity of the Yerida and the Dir B'Tachtonim. And what the Tiferes HaChanochi is pointing out is that already from the perspective of the Chachma, which sees Hanoilad, which understands that process, this is why they went to search for a Menuna Saba, to reveal the secret of Bina. So by way of being Mevatel, that mitzvah for the sake of Achnasas Orchim, they reached into the deepest place of the light of Kesser that would eventually be revealed through this descent from Chachma into Bina, and the secret of Eis Lasos LaHashem Heferu Sarasecha. And so what the Chachamim are realizing now is that, okay, there's a halbashas hadvarim and a halbasha of bina that needs to take that wholeness of chachma and draw it down into a lower place. And that's what we see once they realized that the levushim were lacking the smell of the proper halbasha of chachma within bina. So they were in a state of amazement. They were shocked. Yasvu, they sat. Natlu yadaihu. V'krichu ripta. And they broke bread. They entered now as a result of being aware of the fact that, okay, we don't have the proper understanding of Bina yet. We haven't been able to understand that l'chatchilakite of drawing Chachma down into Bina to eventually reveal the light of Keser Elyon Alav Nikra. And they entered into Avodah Begashmias, they entered into the process of sitting and eating, something that the Malachim can't do. They understood what the Yenukah was pointing out to them. They went from the perspective of Gadlus Amoichin into Yenika, into a place of concealment, into a place of eating, into a place of physicality, into a place of doing the work of drawing Chachma down and schlepping it down into the Kleilim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Rabbi Yehuda Havayadim Luchlachin. Rabbi Yehuda's hands were a little bit dirtied, and again, the Zohar Chai protects, and the Tiferes HaChanochi also says it doesn't mean that his hands were actually dirty, and it was possible b'kisnin, and he didn't actually have to wash his hands over here, and the Yanuka was picking up on a very gentle and delicate issue. But Rabbi Yehuda's hands were a little bit dirty. V'natil yadai, but he rose his hands, baruch al v'loy natal. He made a bracha on the bread, but he didn't wash natilas yadayim. Amar lei, Talmid Rav Shmaya Chasida ason. If you were a Talmud of Rav Shmaya Chasida, lo hayvilchu lebircha biyadayim mezuhamos, then you wouldn't have made a bracha with dirty hands. Uman debarach biyadayim mezuhamos chayev misa. So here we see another encounter where the Malchus of Chachma, which is Rabbi Yehuda, who has Rabbi Yitzchak Nichla within him right now. Rabbi Yehuda is the Rosh HaMedabrim because the Gevuros are only there to reveal the potency of Chachma, to descend down into the territory of Bina, and that takes place by the Malchus of Chachma. That Rabbi Yehuda eats without washing his hands. And suddenly the Yanuka says, you're clearly not a student of Rav Shmaya Chasida. Now Rav Shmaya Chasida is a language of Shema and Chesed. And we know that the light of Bina, as the Baal HaSulam points out, is ki chafetz chesedhu, that Bina is Magal Zer Anpin, which is the descent down into concealment where we can be Payal Chesed. Masha'in came by Chachma, where it's all bittul, betachlis habittul, there's no place for Chesed there, it's complete bittul. It's only in the territory of the opposite of Chesed, in the constriction of Bina and Zer Anpin, of the Shmiya of Bina and the Chesed of the Chasadim that come out from Bina. In that place is going to be the true revelation of Bina. So the Yanuka sees Rabbi Yehuda getting ready to eat, which for Rabbi Yehuda is entering into the place of Avodah Begashmias to understand the secret of Halbashas Advarim, and he sees that you must not be a student of Shmaya Chasida because you didn't wash your hands. And anyone who doesn't wash their hands is Chayev Misa, meaning anyone who doesn't understand the secret of washing their hands in their descent into Bina is still going to see Bina as an experience of Misa. They're still going to be seeing it as a Yamoisu v'lei b'chachma and a degradation away from Chachma. Because what do the hands represent? Zok the Heilig Asayid Yisharim and the Tiferes HaChanochi, and this is exactly what we spoke about last week in the Shira Natilas Yadayim. The hands represent the Pu'ulas HaYadayim, the shifts and the changes and the left and the right, and the descent down into Zer Anpin and the descent down into Chesed, Gvura, Tiferes, Netzach, and Hod. That place of constriction, that place of concealment, that place where the light of Chachma is terrified of entering into. Because when the light of Chochma goes down into Bina, that's one thing. But then for Bina to descend down further into the principles of Zer Anpin, which is more and more constriction of Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, Netzach, Hod, and Yisod, So at that place, it's a double concealment. It's a hastar b'toch hastar. The first hastar on Chochma is Bina. The second hastar is the schlepping of those mochin through Bina into Zar Anpin, which is the secret of Eim Habanim Smecha, which is the mother and the Yenukah. And Rabbi Yehuda wasn't ready to make a bracha on the hands yet. He wasn't ready to wash his hands. He wasn't ready to reveal the understanding that for Chochma to truly reveal itself, it has to go down further and further and further into the nether realms of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya, so that it can come back even higher afterwards with the secret of Su'i Dechem Kodesh Ubarchu Es Hashem, to reveal the secret of Biyad HaNevi'ah Madama, which is the secret of Keser Elyon Alav Nikra, which could only come about when Chochma reveals that the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu continues to exist fundamentally even after it departs its original lofty place and descends down into constriction. So the Yanuka, who's trying to teach Rabbi Yehuda this secret of the proper understanding of Habasha, of Chochma within Bina, the descent of the whole into the part, he says, you didn't wash your hands, meaning you don't understand the secret of the hands yet. You don't understand that it's specifically in the externalization and the Pu'ula Sayadayim and the clarifications and the digging, and the work of being human that the light of Kedusha is going to be most revealed. Pasachahu Yenukah v'amar, and the Yenukah now enters into a point of teaching, and Bina is going to convey to Chochma now the proper way of being mislabesh within it. When you enter into the oil moed, when you enter into the meeting place with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, wash your hands with water so that you do not die. We learn from this pasuk, someone who's not sensitive to the need to wash their hands, to raise the hands upwards, to understand the rectifications that take place in the most hidden of places in order for Chochma to reveal itself fully downwards, based on the Tiferes HaChanochi. And they come close to the king with dirty hands, chayav misa. If they don't understand that the koyach is in the hands, and they haven't refined their hands because it feels too far from Kedusha, then they're not unifying Chochma and Bina properly, and it's a revelation of Chayiv Misa. My time, begin to Yada de Barnash Yasvin Baruma Shal Olam. Because the truth of the matter is, says the Yanuka, who's the secret of Bina and the descent away from Chochma, the hands rest in the loftiest places, in the place of Keser Elyon Olav Nikra, Biyad HaNevi'ah Madama, in that place of descending down in order to rise up even higher. Etzba achada is biyada de barnash v'yu etzba de arama Moshe. And in truth, it's not only the hands that represent concealment, but the etzba is even more particularization. If the hands represent the splitting between chesed and gevura, then the etzbaos represent the splintering of that tunis into five, of chesed, gevura, teferes, netzach, and hod. And the fingers represent separation even more. But there's one remainder within the hand, that middle finger, that representation of that straight line, the highest point of the hand, that element of Tiferes, that represents the unity between all disparity. That's what the Yenukah is revealing. That even though there's a descent down away from Bina into Zar Anpin, into the territories of concealment, nevertheless, there's a secret of Tiferes, there's a secret of Tiferes HaNe'elam, the Kava Emsai, that goes all the way down to Malchus, and then it goes all the way up, back through Bina, back through Chochma, into the Pnimius of Chochma, which is the Pnimius of Atik, which is the Rumo Shel Olam. And that's the finger that Moshe Rabbeinu raised up. Zois HaTorah Shesam Moshe L'fnei Bnei Yisrael. The Etzba of Moshe, the Das of Moshe, Etzba, when spelled out, is going to be the Miloi of Aleph Hey Vav Hey, which is the Shem of Das, which is the Rosh Tevos Es HaShemayim Ve'es HaAretz. That finger of Moshe Rabbeinu represents the full unity where Chochma schleps itself down into the territory of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai in order to ascend upwards in the secret of Berumo Shel Olam. Ksiv v'asiyas brichim atzei shitim chamisha l'karshe tzela hamishkan ha'echad v'chamisha brichim l'karshe tzela hamishkan ha'shenis. So the Yanuka is darshaning now on the planks of wood that compose the Mishkan. The Mishkan represents the territory of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. It represents that territory of drawing the Shechina down into the territory of the Tzimtzum, mebein badei ha'aron. And therefore he's teaching the secret of atzei shitim oimnim, the shtusa de kedusha, which is the Bina in comparison to Chochma, of asisa brechim. He says there are all these different planks. But nevertheless, it says v'ksiv habreach hatichon b'toicha krashim mavrich minakatza lakatza. But nevertheless, in between these planks, there's a singular plank in the center point and the center column that goes from one end to the other, that goes all the way down and all the way up. It's the light of Tiferes Yisod and Malchus. Dahu breach hatichon achrahu. That this, and if you want to say this unifying thread of light that goes all the way down and all the way up, that unifies the territory of concealment, if you want to claim that maybe that's different than the other 5 planks of wood, and so maybe it doesn't represent the secret of unity that is embedded within concealment, As if the five fingers on the hands represent actual concealment, and then you have to draw something from higher above. Lav hachi, that's not the case, but rather the embedded unity is embedded specifically within the concealment of Bina, within that space of Tiferes. Elahahu breachatichon, that central pillar that goes all the way down and all the way up. Me'inun chamisha have. It's one of the five. Train mikan v'train minkan. Chesed gvura on the right, Netzach and Hod on the left, and Tiferes in the middle. V'chad be'emtsiusa. The have breach hatichon. This is the breach hatichon, the amuda de emtsiusa that goes all the way up and all the way down. Amuda de Yaakov Raza de Moshe. The Amud of Yaakov Avinu, the pillar of Yaakov that goes all the way down to reveal how Chochma can schlep itself down by way of the Yesod the Abba that descends down into the Yesod the Ima that now reveals itself within Zer Anpen and expresses itself in the Yesod the Zah. That's the Amud of the Yaakov and the Raza de Moshe. The Kabel Da, in order to reveal itself, Chamesh Etzban the Biyade de Barnash. These are the fingers of the individual. This is the concealment within the concealment. This is where Chochma has to go all the way down into the territory of Tiferes. Because once Chochma is schlepped down through Bina into Tiferes, then it could be mezaveg with Malchus, and then Malchus is ma'ira back to reveal the secret of Tiferes HaNe'elam, which is Atiko Huzav V'zahu Atiko, which is Pnimius Chochma, Pnimius Ta'atik. Rav V'ila Mikula, this middle finger, this Breach HaTichon is higher than all of them. Bekai Mashar Acharina, and it's the secret thread of unity that rests at the heart of all separation. V'inan Chamesh Brichin De'ikran Chamesh Me'ashanin, and each and every one of these fingers represent 100 years, which are the 500 years that it takes to get to the Eitz HaChaim. As the Zohar Kadosh says, these are the 500 years that it takes to get back to the Eitz HaChaim. The refinement of concealment, the descent down into Bina, to reveal how the Eitz HaChaim is encountered specifically in the washing of the hands, in the partaking of this world, and being a human being and not a malach. The bris kadisha etayr b'chamesh etzbayin diyadeh. And the bris kodesh is misayr as a result of those five fingers of chesed, gvur, tveres, netzach, and hoid. Umile stimahu amada amaret. And the words are concealed. Va'alda kol birchen de kahana be'etzpasin talyan. And the highest light of the Mila Stima'a, the highest concealed light of Keser comes down, and this is why the Kohanim, the brachos of Chochma, come down by way of the fingers. This is the way that Moshe Rabbeinu spread his hands. If you have this level of holiness, then there's no need to wash your hands because you're already operating in that place of the Habasha Sachachma within the Bina, and you're already revealing the praise of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Begin the behu kedugma dilhon, misbarich shama kadisha. Va'alda asyan dechakimusa tuva, hechlo eshkachan lahai. But you who are wise men, how are you not aware of the fact that you need to mimic the same way that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is drawing down his chachma, which is preparing the hands and schlepping it down? And you haven't understood the secret of Rav Shemaya Chasida, the secret of the Shema of Bina, which is being miskala within Zer Anpin. V'ihu amar kol tinufa v'chol lechlucha slikule l'sitra achra the hasitra achra mehai tinufa lechlucha asim. Rav Shemaya Chasida taught us the need to cleanse everything, to cleanse this world of all of its filth, and to integrate all of those things which appear to be inessential back into the circle of Avodas Hashem. Because otherwise, if there's something that we feel is not the revelation of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's light from the schlepping down of Chochma into Bina, so then we're going to be stuck. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Yitzchak were stunned. They couldn't speak. They had lost their ability to speak because they were in the process of redeveloping their malchus, the new levush of Bina. Rabbi Yehuda opens up and he says, Bri, Shemada avucha manhu. What's the name of your father? Shatik Yenukah regachada. The Yenukah was silent. The Yenukah tapped into the highest, loftiest place of the Chochma that gives birth to that Bina, which is the secret of Rav Himnuna Saba, his father. Kam legabe ima v'nashakla. He goes to his mother and he kisses her. Amar le imi al abba she'ilu li ilan chakim and emaloin. These chachamim are asking me about Abba. Should I tell them? Meaning the Yanuka, the chachamim want to know, okay, we feel that we've understood Bina. Now tell us about the Chochma that you come from. Tell us about how it comes back to a place of Keser. So before giving them the name of Chochma, before Bina is able to say, yes, you've properly understood the Habasha, he goes back to Bina, he goes back to his mother, and he says, they're asking about Abba, they're asking about the father, they're asking about Rav Himnuna Saba, they're asking whether the full tikkun of Chochma and Bina has been revealed here or not. Amalei Ime, his mother says to him, Bri, Badakta Lahain, have you checked them out? Have you clarified whether they're worthy of knowing who Dad is? I've checked and I haven't found them operating in the way that they need to be operating. Now, here is the true Nakuda. The true Nakuda of Bina is that Hakar Sachisaron. This is where the Chachamim are receiving the true Halbasha, where the Yanuka is able to say, V'loi ishkaches kedekayos. V'lo ishkachech kedekayos. That they are not found kedekayos. That this Hakar Sachisaron is the secret of Bina, which is Eshkachech Kidaka is Rosh Tevos Chaf Aleph, which is the gematria of Eke, which is the shame of Bina. Lachishu Le'ima, and the mother whispers to him, La'ahadar Legabe, and he responds to them, Amar Le, Asan Sha'altan al Abba, you're asking me about my father, Vaha Estalik Me Alma, he's no longer in this concealment here. B'chol Yuma de Chasida Kadishan Azlan Ba'orcha, but any day that there's true righteous Chachamim who understand the secret of drawing that Chachma down into Chesed, when they're walking along the path, Ihu Taya Abasre, my father travels after them. V'i Asyan Kadishan Elyoinin Hechle Yishkachechle Azil Taya Abasreichu. And if you truly understood the secret of Chochma, then you would have seen the clarification of Bina, and you would have seen the true source of where I come from. But if you're so wise and you didn't see him, how could that be? Aval Bekadmisa Chamina Bechu. But before, says the Yenuka, I sensed it. I saw that you didn't say Kriyat Shema, that you, on your levushim, you didn't understand the true secret of Bina. And now I also see that my father didn't burden himself to travel after you with his wagon full of Torah. Because you weren't zoichet to my father to travel after you, meaning you didn't have the full hasaga of Bina yet. I'm not going to tell you who my father is. Rabbi Yehuda turns to Rabbi Yitzchak. Again, Malchus has to reawaken the flames of Gevura, the Kedusha, to descend down even further into Bina. It appears to me that this person is not from this world, Rabbi Yehuda says to Yitzchak, the Rabbi Yitzchak. Achlu, they continued to eat, they descended back down into the Avodah of Birurim. Yenukah have Amar Mile Da'araisa, and the Yenuka was entering into a place of sharing words of Torah, the Chidusha Da'araisa. Milin da'iraisa Chochma, Chedusha da'iraisa Binah. Amru hav v'nevarich, and the Chachamim said, "Come, let's bench." Amr lehu yeyus amarton. Spoke well. Begin the shama kadisha lemisparach bebrachada ele behazmana. You spoke well, and this is where the Yanuka is revealing that the Chachamim are beginning to understand the true secret of Habashas HaChachma within Bina, and why he's going to begin to give them the bracha. Because they understood the secret of the Zimun, they understood the secret of Hazmana Sadvarim. Hazmana, Zman, is the secret of being in the world of separation, being in the place of Bina, being in the place of time orientation, being in the constriction of Bina, in the Halbasha Sadvarim, and the need to eat and sleep and be a person in this world. They understood that with Hazmana, with preparation, with preparing ourselves, with not rushing too quickly, with not forgetting about the true purpose at the core of all things, a person can remember Chochma even within Bina. The reason the Chachamim are afraid to enter into the levush of Bina is because Bina gives birth to Zah, and Zah is concealment and constriction, and Chachma is afraid that in the space of Yeshus and selfhood, that it's going to forget about the nothingness of itself. But ultimately, what they're coming to realize is that through the Hazmana Milsa, through Hazmana and Zimun and preparation, and saying Havlan Nevarich, and saying HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let us take everything in this world and bless you with it. And the secret of Hachana, of preparing, and how three human beings, three men who are sitting together in this world, even in a world that's filled with concealment, can ultimately draw out a unity that reveals the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. That's the true secret of the Tikkun. The true secret of the Tikkun is the Hazmana, the preparation, the fixing of time, the fixing of the brokenness of time. The Yenuka says to them, now you begin to understand. Pasach v'yamar, the Yenuka says, Avarcha es Hashem b'chol eis, I'm going to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu at every moment. That's what David HaMelech says. Now, the Yenuka is saying to Rabbi Yehuda, who's Malchus, a pasuk from Tehillim, which is David HaMelech, which is Malchus, because it's the true understanding of the Levush. V'chima chama David loymar avarcha es Hashem. Why did David have to announce that he was going to bless HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Ela chama David debai hazmana v'amar avarcha. David understood the secret that there needs to be a hazmana, there needs to be preparation, there needs to be an invitation. A person must invite the moment. A person has to be the one who is the host in this world. Even though we're just a guest in HaKadosh Baruch Hu's world, we have to be the host to the things that emerge into our lives. Not because we're in control of them, but because we have control over how we treat those guests that enter into our lives. And we have to welcome it. That's the secret of hazmana, preparation, engaging with this world with consciousness. And then Chochma can reveal itself down within Bina, and it can still draw down the bracha. To begin the b'shaisa, the barnash yasiv al patoira, because when a human being is sitting in this world ready to eat, to be a human being in this world, it's a split bag. Chochma is not wrong for being afraid. It's a split bag. Shchinta kaimateman, the sitra achra kaimateman. The shchina is there and the sitra achra is there. It's chesed or it's gevura. It's split. The fingers extend in different ways. And therefore, you're right to be afraid of this worldliness. But by becoming aware of the fact that there's always two-ness, which is the secret of Netil Sedayim, like we spoke about, so then a person has prepared themselves. Kad azmin barnash lebarcha lekutchabrichu shchinta itchakenes legabe leela lekabla birchem v'sitra achar is kafya. When a person prepares themselves and they say, "Oh wait, I'm going to prepare myself at the end of this process and at the beginning of this process to ensure that the experience of this worldliness and the levush of bina and the eating and the processing of the worlds of separation that the Yanuka is trying to teach the Chachamim," he's saying, when you are mazmin the Shechina, when you set your intention and you set your kavana sa'achila properly, so then what's revealed is that you're revealing the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu down here. And then the Shechina stays and the Sitra Achra is nifkaf. The ilo, but if not, azmin barnash lebircha lekutchabrichu. If we don't prepare ourselves, then we're stuck in concealment, and then Chochma gets swallowed up in Bina. Then it's Sitra Achra. Shema umechashesha lemahave lechulka b'hayu bracha. Then the Sitra Achra comes along and he laughs. Then the Sitra Achra comes along and he laughs. The Zohar continues after an extended discussion about the hazmana. And it says as follows. Rabbi Yehuda, Zaka Chulkana, praiseworthy is your lot, praiseworthy are you. That from the beginning of creation until now, I haven't understood the secret of Bina, of Shmiya in this way. I've never understood the secret of the Lavush of Bina. This is why I really thought that you weren't a human being. Amar le, bra, he says to him, my son, Malacha di Rechima dili, my angel, my beloved. Hada da amart va'asita breichim atze shitim chamisha lakarshe tzela hamishkan v'chamisha brichim leyarkes ayama. Habrichim tuva ikahacha. There's so many different planks here. V'yadayim inan train, but there's only two hands. And so how can you use this pasuk to teach about the necessity of drawing Chochma down into concealment if the Yadayim only represent a splitness? Amrle dahu da amrinan mefumya de barnash ishtame man ihu aval hoyel veloy ishkachon anaema. This is what it means when we say that you could only know a person from the words that they speak, but I haven't spoken yet. And the Yanuka continues. And he says, Pasach v'yamar, he comes to teach, HaChacham einav barosho. The Chacham has his Einayim Barosh. Now the Yanuka is revealing to the Chachamim exactly what just transpired, the drawing of Chochma down into Bina. HaChacham einav barosho. The Chacham has his eyes in his head. V'chi ba'an eser einoi de barnash. Where else are the eyes of barnash? Ela barosho. They're only in the head. Dilma begufo bedroa. Da'afik l'Chacham yasim mikol b'nei alma. Where else are the eyes going to be that we attribute the eyes to being in the head of the Chacham more than anybody else? Ela kra hachi huvada, but rather the pasuk is meant to be understood as follows: the Tanan lo yehech barnash begiloi dereisha dalaramos. My time de shchinta sharya al reisha. V'chol Chacham enoi miloi beroisha inun ba'hu de sharya v'kaima al reisha. The difference between a Chachma is that the Chacham, everybody has their eyes in their head, but the Chacham has his eyes on what's in his head, on the Shechina, that Shora on the head. the secret of Chochma being able to be Megala itself down, down, down into the territories of the Shechina, into the territories of Bria, Yitzir, and Asiya. And as long as a person has their eyes on the Shechina, they're mazmin the Shechina, and they have the preparation of inviting God into this moment. And that's what it means that the Chacham Ein of Barosho. That's the secret of Halbasha. Halbasha is recognizing the Shechina in each and every place. That's the Einayim of Chachma being revealed within the Levush of Bina. V'kad Einoi Teiman, and when the eyes are there, Linda Dahahu Nehura da Adlik al Resha, it will come to know the light that is illuminated upon its head, which is the secret of Keser Elyon Olav Nikra. It's Tarich Lemashla, it has to be drawn down by way of Shem and Mislas Kodesh. Begin to Gufa de Barnash Ihu Psila, because the body of the human being is like a wick, V'nehura Adlik La'ela, and there's a light that is illuminated above, and it's through the Shemen of the mind and the Chachma of the thoughts that illuminate that Ner Hashem Nishmas Adam. V'shal Mamalkat Tzavach V'yamer V'shemen al Reshecha al Yachsar. Don't lack the light of illumination of that oil, that anointing oil of Chachma being drawn down into the body to reveal the light of Keser. It's Tarich Lemashcha, it has to be drawn down, V'inun Uvden Tavin, and that's going to be through good deeds like Hachnasas, Chasan, and Kala, and not to think that it's a B'diavad to descend down into this world, but rather to see it as a Lechatchila Ariber, V'aldah HaChachav Ein of Barosh, and this is the secret of the Chacham, who has the ability to have his eyes in his head, V'lo Be'eser Achra, on the Shechina. That's the secret of the Habasha of Chachma within Bina. You wise ones, it's certain that the Shechina rests upon your heads. How did you not pay attention to this? Understand what we're talking about, says the Yenukah. All of the concealment, all of the constriction that you're forced to look at and that you're forced to be mazmin HaKadosh Baruch Hu into, it's all simply split between the left and the right side. It's only two sides. There's only one and two. There's only the Shechina or the Sitra Achra, and it's about attending to the light of HaKadosh Baruch Hu there. Asu inun v'nashkaihu. The Chachamim came close and they kissed the child. Bacha Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is crying now because Bechia is the light of B'shimcha Yagilun Kol Hayom. It's a secret of Bina. It's the secret of Bina. Rabbi Yehuda now understands the secret of Bina. V'amar, and he says, Rabbi Shimon Zakal Cholkech. Rabbi Shimon, the light of Bina, praiseworthy is your lot. Praiseworthy is your Chulka Derabanan, your Levush. Zacha Dara, praiseworthy is this generation. That in your generation, as a result of your light, Rabbi Shimon, the light of Bina b'taharasa, even the young children are tremendous mountains. Asyas Ime, the mother comes along, because what happened here is that the Chachamim, now that they've understood the secret of what the Yanuka was trying to see, they're no longer so surprised by the Yanuka, because they understand, this is the secret of our Rebbe, Rabbi Shimon. This is what Rabbi Shimon is teaching us, the Habasha of Rabbi Shimon. So when the mother sees that the Chachamim understand the secret of Bina, Amrlan Rabboisai, now she says, B'matu minchai, please, loy tashkochon abayrei ele be'ena tova, only look at him with good eyes. Now that you understand what he was trying to teach you all along, don't be upset, only look at him with good eyes. Now that you understand that his light is just the light of your Rebbe, Rabbi Shimon, the light of Bina that becomes the Levush, to Chochma, the Yichud Tata that reveals the Yichud Ilah, the Nefesh HaBahamis that reveals the Nefesh HaLukus, the Beinoni that reveals the light of the Tzaddik within the individual. They said, Amrulei Zaka Chulta Chasisa Kshera, holy woman, blessed is your lot, Asisa Breira Michol Shar Yanashin, clearly clarified through all measures of clarity. The Bina here is the same Bina of Rabbi Shimon. The Kudsha Barichu Baruch Keich, because your lot is so clarified. The Arim Diglech al Kol Shar Nashin the Alma. Amar Yanuka, the Yanuka opens his mouth. Anna le mistafina me enabisha. And now the Yanuka is telling them who his father is. Now he's revealing the light of Rav Hamnuna Saba. They're not to be mistaken. Yeah, you have Rabbi Shimon, I have Rav Hamnuna Saba, and they're both unified in all matters of unification. Amar Yenuka, Anale Mistafina me Einabisha. Mommy, I'm not afraid of Einabisha. Why? Because like the Gemara says, Ana di Zavade Yosef Ka'atina di Lashalta be Einabisha. That Rav Yochanan ben Zakkai says, Rav Yochanan says, I am the offspring of Yosef, and like a fish, I'm not afraid of Einabisha because I rest concealed within the water. The Barnuna Rabba V'Yakira Ana. I am the child of the great fish. I am a child of Lavyasan. I am a child of Rav Hamnuna Saba. I am a child of the Bina within the Bina, the light of Rabbi Shimon. V'nuna loy dachel me'ina bisha. And a fish is not afraid of eyes of negativity. D'chsiv yigdu larev b'kerev haaretz, because they will grow and they will multiply within the land. My lerov, what does it mean multiplicity? La'aska al-eina, to protect themselves from negative eyes. V'taninan ma'dag in diyama maya chafya alayin leis eina bisha v'chulei. And we also learn that just as the fish in the sea are covered over by water and no eye can see them, so too the ayin ra is not going to be sholet on them. B'kerev haaretz, within Malchus itself, b'goy b'nei nasha al ansha al ara. Amru bara malacha dileis bana ena bisha v'loy mesitra de ena bisha asinan. We don't have a negative eye and we don't come from the side of a negative eye. B'kudsha v'richu chafi aleich begadfaihu. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu is covering you over with his wings. The gadfaihu, the Balasulam explains that Lasid Lavo, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is going to give 2 gadfayim to each and every one of the tzaddikim, wings like the malachim. Ahav and Yira, the midos of Zer Anpin. Why? Because even after the fundamental revelation of Chochma, there will always be a necessity of Bina, the wings that allow us to go from one level to the next, to always perpetually be aware of the need of unifying Chochma within Bina, of drawing down the old age into the Yenukah, into that place of smallness, and to unify both of them to reveal that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is revealed no matter what, and no matter how, and no matter when, and no matter where we find ourselves, Be'ezras Hashem.